Welcome to episode 51 of the Comic Watchers Show. I'm your host, Matt Meyer, coming at you from Oklahoma City. With me this week is Nick from somewhere in Texas. Nick, say hello to kids at home.
Hello, kids at home. I am Nicholas from Carthage, Texas. You still don't know where it is. It's middle of nowhere.
It is. I looked it up on the map once. And we have a special guest with us tonight. This is Miriam, also of Comic Watch.
Konnichiwa, I'm Miriam. I'm from the anime department, so hi.
Thank you for being here. Miriam also has the distinction of being the first female guest or host or anyone on the show. That is awesome. We're not sexist. Wait, are we sexist?
Nope.
I hope not.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you for clarifying that. So Brian is out this week, and JJ is drawing somewhere. So Nick is going to bring the news to us for the week. Nick, what you got?
Yeah, definitely. So, as you know, NYCC has been going on. So there has been a lot of news, and there's no way I could get to it all. So I'll hit a lot of the highlights, and we'll go from there. Marvel recently announced the return of Wolverine in his very own ongoing series, which is the first he's had since 2014. The new series is written by Benjamin Percy with artists Adam Kubert and Victor Bogdanovic attached. Wolverine #1 is set to release in February as part of the second wave of Dawn of X titles following Hickman's recent massively successful relaunch of X Comics. So definitely exciting. Indie publisher Abrams Comics announced a new graphic novel line titled Shirley Book that is curated by the talented Mariko Tamaki of the X-23 and Tomb Raider comics. The Shirley Books line of graphic novels is said to have something for every reader, boasting stories both fiction and nonfiction. These new graphic novels will take a close look at activism, achievements, and struggles of the LGBTQIA community, so this will definitely be something to keep an eye out for. In a story that broke from The Hollywood Reporter, it seems like Aquaman star Yahya Abdul-Mateen is in talks to play a young Morpheus in the upcoming Matrix 4 film that was recently announced. The film already has Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss attached, as well as Lana Wachowski set to produce. But I looked into it, and Lily Wachowski, who co-wrote and co-directed the original films, isn't going to be involved. So interesting to see how that plays out. The Matrix 4 is going to begin production in 2020. Let's see. DC's Wonder Comics imprint, led by Brian Michael Bendis, announced a new comic that's set to debut in February 2020, and it's centered on the fan favorite character Princess Amethyst of Gemworld. The series is going to spin out of the current Young Justice series from writer, illustrator, and colorist Amy Reeder. She's doing all of it, so...
Wow, that's impressive.
Right, it's going to be her pet project, it seems.
That's awesome.
Over to Marvel, Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be relaunching with a new #1 in January 2020.
Thanks, Marvel.
Saw that.
Oh, there's more. The new creative team will feature Al Ewing and artist Juan Cable, and we'll see the return of the Gods of Olympus. But fans of Donny Cates won't have to wonder what's next for long because he's going to take over the Thor series from longtime writer Jason Aaron. Marvel also announced a relaunch of their popular Star Wars comics, so they're going back to #1. And this time it's going to be set between the events of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So they're going to a whole different time period in Star Wars lore. And this series is going to be hitting shelves January 2020, written by Charles Soule with art by Jesus Sayes. Oh, with the Birds of Prey film coming up soon, DC is going to capitalize on the excitement of Harley Quinn being back in the theaters. So they're bringing back the fan favorite creative team of Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Connor for Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey comic. It's a 4-issue mini-series that's going to release in February 2020. And they're usually credited for kind of the rebirth of Harley Quinn in her new age of popularity and bringing that direction. So it's kind of cool to see him come back. But I know a lot of fans are just kind of groaning about another Harley Quinn comic. And as the one who reviews most of all of them, I'm almost right there myself. Finally, I guess the film that's brought us here tonight, and that's what everybody's talking about, is Joker from Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix. That is making some controversy, and everybody knows that by now. This isn't news. But the film has made over 129 million domestically, bringing its worldwide total to 281 million. So it's expected to enter the second weekend upwards to 349 million worldwide. Um, the discussion definitely goes on and is continuing about this movie, but DC and Warner Bros. Definitely have a financial hit on their hands. I don't think this movie costs near that much to make, so it looks like it's, all downhill from here. But that's all the news I got, so kick it back over to Matt.
Yeah, awesome. So this week we're going to be talking about the Joker film that came out last week to pretty widespread acclaim and a not small amount of controversy. We're going to have just a little bit of a roundtable discussion about all of that, the film, anything and everything kind of going into that basket all together. So, yeah, let's do this. So, The Joker, directed by Todd Phillips, by using a screenplay by Phillips and Scott Silver, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Zazie Beetz, Robert De Niro, and Francis Conroy. It tells the story of Arthur Fleck, a societal outcast with severe depression and social anxiety that manifests itself in a neurotic tic in the form of an uncontrollable laughter. He doesn't have any friends. He lives with his mother, who is dealing with some form of dementia of her own. And the movie is really about this man slowly peeling away from society, and by turn, society failing him, and the series of events that leads him to becoming ultimately the Joker. It is very much a grounded, non-spandex and capes movie. It has a very 70s aesthetic to it, obvious homage to Taxi Driver, and kind of a surprise turn for Todd Phillips, who's best known for his Hangover movies. So, but yeah, there's been just all kinds of controversy. I know I went in to see this movie with, I don't want to say low expectations, because that's not right, but I didn't know what to expect. So I was hoping to be pleasantly surprised, but prepared to be let down. It turned out to be very engaging, very, very engrossing. Arthur Fleck, quotes, is he's at once sympathetic but not, and that's a very difficult trick to pull off. So I mean, Joaquin Phoenix just did wonders with this role. The man looks like is just emaciated. I fear, so I was just instantly worried for his health. But I really want to hear what you guys think about it. So, Miriam, you're our guest. Why don't you go first in the hot seat?
Well, I came at this, I grew up watching The Joker because of the Batman series, the animated series. So Mark Hamill was like the voice actor for him and everything. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to go watch The Joker, because who doesn't like The Joker? I mean, he's insane. I get there and I'm watching it and I'm just like, completely mind-blowing about this backstory that they had created him, of him being chipped away slowly and slowly until he starts going a little crazier and crazy. Well, crazier. Let's say crazier about it. And at first, because I'm not a very Batman person, I've always, leaned forward to Deadpool and Gambit and Spawn, that I haven't really divulged into the Batman series at all, unless it was like Saturday morning. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. This is like the darkest thing I've ever seen them do at all. I mean, of course, I've read Injustice, God Among Us and everything. I've seen how all of that expanded into that series. So I was just kind of, what's gonna happen next in that moment? You know, it was a surprise turn every step of the way when I was watching the movie, and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't really know what to expect because, you know, anime person right here, you, I didn't even understand it. I was just like, this cannot be true. You know, this is just wow. I was really surprised by it, and again, I was kind of concerned about the actor's health throughout the whole way. He was so wow. Yeah, we left the theater kind of speechless throughout the whole thing. It wasn't until like middle of the night that we started actually discussing about what was happening, and you know, when we get down to it, it's just like, this is it. This is the Joker. You know, Heath Ledger, you know, rest in peace and all, but wow. You know, Joaquin Phoenix did an amazing job in molding the Joker to the beginning of it. You know, like you said, this wasn't just a regular superhero movie where they're putting on spandex and getting ready to fight. It was the moment of, this is how it's going to happen, the mental breakdown of who the Joker became. And that was actually pretty amazing for me. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. The performance of Joaquin Phoenix just is what people immediately talk about because it's so powerful. And it's hard for that not to be the first thought in your mind when walking out of it is, this guy really turned in just a performance of a lifetime. And but this movie, we did not have the same reaction. We were pretty speechless watching it, but walking out of the theaters, the conversation started. And my wife and I went to see it, and 2 hours later, we're just making home, and the conversation's still going. And like now we're days later, and it's still a subject that we bring up delicately because it's a discussion that we're having, and this movie does that. I didn't walk out of it and think this is the most brilliant film I've ever watched. I walked out of it with this sinking pit feeling in my stomach because it was so hard to swallow. This wasn't a movie that it's like Guardians. When you walked out of Guardians, you were almost dancing like Star-Lord because it was so fun. This movie is not that. This is the opposite. You kind of look inwards when you watch this movie, and it makes you contemplate certain things, and it really makes you engage with it. But ultimately, the film, it is controversial. There's no getting around that, and the controversy came, in my opinion, from it being framed by Todd Phillips' discussion in these interviews and the remarks that he's given. Matt mentioned that it was interesting that he left the Hangover films for something like Joker. And he commented on that and said he left comedy because of leftist woke culture and like what that did to comedy. So yeah, he immediately gets this discussion going and just kicks off the controversy. And whether you think that's marketing or what, the content of the film plays to that discussion. Mm-hmm. When I left it, I thought this is such a nihilistic take on Joker because it plays to the concepts of what a lot of leftists have disagreed with it being, in calling it basically a love letter to the incel manifesto, because it plays on these notes and that are political touch points in our culture and what's going on with society right now. And it knows that it's using these notes. You see the relationship between him and his mother, being the loner, the relationship with him and Zazie Beetz that totally gets flipped on its head. And that's what brings me to this film has this dual approach to it where everybody's really criticizing whether or not it's a sympathetic approach to the Joker. And when you watch this story, Joaquin Phoenix's performance almost begs you to be sympathetic to the character. But the film doesn't treat him in that way. Every time you think it's getting to the point of sympathy, it flips it on its head. He wasn't with Zazie Beetz at all. He's just imagining that because he's, excuse my language, he's fucking crazy. And that is the ultimate point. So the controversy comes from them playing with these notes that we generally agree are dangerous in society. The line at the end when he says, This is a spoiler episode. I feel like it's a healthy point to remark that we're
Oh
talking.
yeah, spoilers are on.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
if you came into it by now, there are spoilers here. So, that being said, the ending line is what a lot of the discussion is centered around. When he says, "This is, what do you get when you get a loner who's cast out by society, and all those that cared about him," or something like that. And he says, "This is what you get." And he's referring to the craziness that is before you in Joker. And it's that note or that line that really sets people. And I think it was a bit too on the nose for what the film was trying to do. By then, it felt like the third act was really harping on these points. And that one, it just struck as odd because I saw what he was doing. He's playing to both sides of this, and that one felt like it was just a bit forced. So the third act just rolled in a really weird way. And that's what sends you out of the theater talking, because that is a lot of the discussion you see on social media is, boy, the last 20 minutes of that movie are crazy. Like, it's a build up to this just breakdown of everything, and you see Joker. But that breakdown is an exploration of a cultural discussion that we're having right now with mass shooters and the impacts that they create on society and what creates them and what radicalizes them. And this is a film that has a white male who's handed a gun by, some coworker, and it's real quiet and hush hush, and he gets put in a position where he has to use it, and then it just snowballs from there. And while a lot of people look at this film and see certain things that are reminiscent of society, the film doesn't treat it in a way that is sympathetic towards those notes. That's the whole point of when we get to this third act and what's happening in the development of this film. When it switches it on its head, it takes that and flips it and tells you, these are the notes that you thought were happening, but this is not it, because this guy is crazy. And that's the ultimate trait of this character, is he's crazy. And this is an anarchistic and nihilistic view of the character, of just somebody who, like you said, rest in peace, Heath Ledger, just wants to watch the world burn. And that's what you get at the end of this story, when he's dancing and smearing blood on his face and watching the world burn. That is the point.
Well, and he's found his audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Go on. I'm sorry.
No, definitely take it away, man. I can ramble all day about this.
Save it for the X-Men talk next time. So yeah, I feel like you kind of hit on something that occurred to me. Roughly midway through the movie, Arthur Fleck crosses the point of no return. He does something totally reprehensible. He basically gets away with it, and he feels zero remorse. And a lesser film and or a filmmaker with less artistic vision might have taken that time to do it like a shallow victory lap and glorify. It's like, yeah, he's taken down the scum. Yeah. This movie doesn't do that. It puts everything in such stark terms that it's almost like it's laying out an autopsy in terms of how detached it is, other than just hitting you with the impact of it. And that's not to say that it's wallowing in its own negativity or anything like that. But like you were saying, it's just the facts. This is it. This is what we're looking at. There's nothing pretty here. Yes, Arthur, to a degree, there's a certain amount of sadness to Arthur Fleck's story, but in a lot of ways, he chooses his path. And just as much as society, by leaving him behind and insisting that he, who has mental illness, should behave as though he doesn't, leaves him behind as well. Right. And there's lots of other things in there as well, like the stuff with his mom and his parentage, which was a little much, but I understand why they did it. Okay.
I really don't understand why they did it. Like,
well, okay, I do, but Miriam, You sound like you had something to say, and we've kind of excluded you for the last few
No,
minutes.
no, I'm kind of just listening to you guys because I'm getting my head straight about this because it's just like you said, Nick, Joker's crazy, but he's always been crazy. I mean, look how in one of the comics he flayed somebody. It was a businessman or somebody, the torture of Barbara Gordon, and then look what happened to Robin. I mean, come on. I mean, at one point, it's just like we kind of understand, even though this movie was leading up to him being created as the Joker, we knew from the very start he's crazy. He went to Arkham Asylum, and that's where crazy people go. That's what happens. We entered into this movie thinking, oh, it's not going to be that dark, but it is dark because it touches on the reality of what's going on around us in the world. Even maybe they've touched base on the comic books that have been coming out lately because, like I said, the torture of Barbara Gordon was pretty dark. The death of Robin was a controversy itself because there were a lot of people who were just talking about it over and over again that ended up becoming the movie, and I'm sorry if I say this wrong, Under the Red Hood or something like that. I'm sorry.
No, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Joker is just known for these moments, and I talked about this a lot because the atmosphere surrounding this character, like the community and the culture knows the Joker as this character who killed Robin, who with the Killing Joke, who had a big influence on the Joker film. Actually, they touch on it, but they don't go the full route. But yeah, his what could be perceived as sexual molestation or even rape of Barbara Gordon on top of torturing her. Matt. And this is the character that the controversy of this character's existence is just going to happen. And this is one more stage in that character's evolution and the controversy that his existence brings.
Well, from the get-go, he's always been a villain. There's no way that he could ever redeem himself at all.
No.
But,
No.
Yeah, and that's interesting. This film almost begins at the point of no redemption. Like you bring that expectation to this character, and the film toys with that.
Well, and here's another thing it does really well is we know ultimately where where Arthur Fleck is gonna end up. He's gonna be the Joker, and so in that regard, the end is not a giant surprise in and of itself, but it's the journey of how he gets there. All these little steps and all these aggressions, both micro and macro, that create this snowball effect that push him over the edge to the point where, he kills a man in his apartment just brutally, absolutely brutally. And it's hard to watch. Like, it's just so stark in its portrayal of this just gratuitous, horrifying violence. And he just sits down and chills. No big deal.
It was awkward.
It is. That's like the
awkward.
more I think about it, I think that's the most uncomfortable scene in the entire movie for me, just because it's all so casual. And he goes from 90 to nothing like that. And then, of course, the other guy that's in there is understandably filling his pants, and then, can't get out, which is not funny, but funny.
I feel bad because
I feel bad for laughing about that, but I know Phillips knew exactly what he was doing with that.
And to that point, I think that's like a microcosm of what this film does. You're not supposed to like it because it's a hard-to-like film. And that scene is so great because, you're not supposed to laugh. You just watch this gruesome murder, and now this guy can't even get out because he can't reach the lock. And he's got to ask the crazy murderer who's just chilling out in the back to come unlock the door. And that film makes you that scene makes you so unsettled. It's almost what the whole film is doing.
Absolutely.
Now, you're not supposed to laugh, but it's funny.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No. I mean, it's an unsettling scene, but there's,
really is.
it works. Oh, and just FYI, I was just looking this up on Box Office Mojo. The film only had a $55 million budget.
Whoa.
So somebody got freaking paid on this deal. Wow, that's astonishing.
It is. Like, wow, that just hit me in my face. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the production value is so high on it, you would really never guess that it was that lower of a budget film, but...
Well, it has a small cast.
Mm-hmm.
There's really only 5 roles. The 4 I mentioned earlier, and then Thomas Wayne, who's...
Which, I guess we have to discuss
very
that
minor.
more. Like, that was the one part of the film that I thought was a complete afterthought. This was, oh yeah, I'm dealing with a Bat Family character in the Joker. People are gonna want to see something about Batman because of the dichotomy that's been explored so often between Joker and Batman.
Well, not just that, but brand recognition.
Absolutely, it's marketing. And
throwing, and again, spoilers on, whatever, at this point, if you've come this far and you haven't figured that out, I'm sorry. Pay better attention next time.
Yeah.
But the fact that they threw the Wayne murders in at the end and tied it to the climax of the movie is unnecessary. And that's my biggest complaint with the movie. And it, honestly, in the grand scheme of the film, it's relatively minor. It really is. And we all know that why it was there. It was there for brand purposes. I'm sure whoever the producer was, other than Michael Uslan, who has the sweetest freaking deal in the history of Hollywood, said, we gotta do a little bit thing with the Waynes. You can make it happen, right? Okay. But
I did have a little issue with that also.
Do what?
I had a little issue with it as well, because it's just like, I understand that you're tying it into the movie because of branding, as you said, but then it's just like, but you had to put a Joker mask on him. And, the original shooter, of course, if I remember his name correctly, Joe Cool?
Chill.
Joe Chill. Thank you. See, I was almost there.
Close.
Again, I'm trying to sort it out in my head.
You're good.
But he was unmasked when he shot Bruce Wayne's parents. And then to throw just a Joker mask on him and then do all that, I was just like, did it really have to go to that point where you had to put a mask on just to tie in the movie? So I was really,
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, it really does work as a minor touchstone in the grand scheme of things. But the other actors and actresses in the film were great. I mean, I feel like this was the best Robert De Niro performance we've had in a very long time. And it wasn't that he necessarily did anything all that spectacular. He was just thoroughly Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
In a good way. And I love the fact that he's old enough now that he could inhabit the role that Jerry Lewis played in oh god, I just went blank on the name of the movie. The one. I gotta look it up because I went blank. I feel terrible.
Oh.
On IMDb. The King of Comedy.
Jeez. Just so you know.
Well, it's not the best Scorsese or De Niro movie ever. So I can forget it. But like he's in the Jerry Lewis role now from that movie, and now Joaquin Phoenix is in his role. So I just think that's an interesting Cliff's Note. Francis Conroy was great. I love Francis Conroy. I will watch every season, even the bad ones of American Horror Story, just to see her, because she's just so great of an actress. That scene where he's bathing her, they're just sitting there. And it's like it's the most normal thing in the world.
Oh my god.
But it's great.
Which is funny because I actually just started American Horror Story as well.
Oh
So
yeah,
I'm
she's
actually
awesome.
diving right in there too. So, but yeah, there were a lot of very awkward scenes in the Joker. Very, you need a backup kind of scenes because like you said, take that bad scene and then that murder scene and everything. That was awkwardness to its peak.
Yeah.
And what really got me was like he was just standing there while Thomas Wayne was peeing. And I'm just like, really? Did you have to go that far? You couldn't just wait.
No boundaries. No boundaries.
No boundaries at all.
No.
He's so awkward just in any societal situation, like any public area. Matt, your review that came out was pretty insightful into that because it almost I think you mentioned that he felt out of sync with his surroundings.
Yeah.
And that phrase really hit me because when he's sitting in the comedy club taking notes and he's listening to the jokes and he's listening to people laugh, and then it's almost like he remembers that he's supposed to laugh. So it just comes out. But nobody else is laughing at the time.
Because he remembered he needed to react.
Yeah, and you can see that process happening on the character, and he does that in a lot of different situations. And it's so chilling and haunting because there's so much going on behind those eyes. But that's what a lot of the characters, their strong performances play into the way Joaquin Phoenix approached Joker and how he interacted with them. So it was interesting to see like De Niro's strong performance. It was, like you said, one of his best ones lately, but it was him just being a talk show host.
Yeah.
And that normalcy is offset by Joker's batshit crazy persona. And it even, they contribute to one another. And I think that chemistry really showed up on screen. But you can talk about all of this so much about the production value, the score. How great was that score? An
Icelandic cellist led that score. Wow. I was listening to an interview with her on NPR last week. Yeah, I forget her name, but yeah, it's mostly just a cello.
Yeah, and like when he goes into the bathroom and shuts the door, just that is haunting stuff. Every aspect of how this movie was made, just peak execution.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the content it handles is where all the discussion is.
Well, and I think that's a good point to turn our discussion a little bit, is the social controversies that have come up because of this. And we touched on this a couple episodes ago on the show, and at the time I was kind of dismissive of it over the grounds of censorship, not realizing that there had been credible threats made in connection with the film. So of course, the theater had an obligation to not show it. I get that, and I get that now. And if anyone heard me say a couple weeks ago, I apologize if I offended anybody, because I clearly didn't have all the facts. So that's on me.
Well, but even then, when we went to the movie theaters, you could notice a large police presence when we walked into the movie theater.
That's
so
scary.
It was like, that was scary because it's just like, look what happened,
Yeah.
And it's saddening to think that we're in this moment in society where we have to take care of ourselves even in the theater now.
Oh yeah. Well, it's funny, Nick, that you brought up The Matrix earlier, because that movie absolutely would be a controversial release today. Unequivocal. Because they're just shooting people and looking cool doing it pretty much 95% of the movie. And I love The Matrix. I'm never it's a nearly perfect movie, but if it were released today, it would have a very difficult time getting the distribution and finding an audience, just because of where we are as a society and a culture today, which unfortunately hinges and is on reacting to these horrors that keep playing themselves out over and over and over again. And obviously, Todd Phillips wanted to say something about the loners out there. And I think where the message is getting twisted up is people misinterpreting what he's saying and misattributing the film's intentions towards glorification or sympathy. And I'm sorry, I watched that movie and I just didn't get either of those things. If somebody wanted to take those things away, they would have to choose to take those things away. Would make a very conscious decision to do so. But I don't know. How do you all feel about that?
Miriam.
Go ahead, Miriam.
Well, I think, like you said, it comes down to a choice, a conscious choice. We can turn left or right, and sometimes people just, make a very wrong choice at the moment. Like you said, The Matrix was a whole big thing. If it came out today, then yeah, it would have probably not have a following because of the shooting that's happened. Me, when I saw The Matrix, I just tried to do the lean as much as possible. The way that they lean back and everything, I was just like, I'm gonna do that.
That bullet time.
Yeah. But, how we're moving forward, I feel like it's not the right way anymore. And I do believe what Todd was doing was just kind of touching base that this happens. No matter what. No matter how many times you try to cover up, it will happen. Like, let's be honest, there are a lot of music about, the gun violence around all of us. There are a lot of movies about it, in documentaries. There's just a base of where it's like you come into this movie and you're just like, you guys continually say, they try to play it as a sympathetic thing, but in all honesty, when you leave that theater, you have that pit in your stomach thinking this happens in reality no matter what.
Yeah
absolutely. I think the reality of the situation is what he is diving into, and that's what gives the impression that this isn't a story that needs to be told, because this is a story that we are living, and this is a voice that you're giving credence to, that we are experiencing on a daily basis. This craziness isn't the fiction that's on screen. It's happening in our schools and in our theaters. And that's what makes this film, one, a sensitive topic, and also potentially dangerous. The word irresponsible is thrown around, but I don't like that word, because it implies inherent responsibility on who's giving the content. And when Phillips released this movie, he gave some insight that he believes in death of the author. And that death of the author is, when he released the movie, he said, this is your movie now. So when Matt said people are going to have to make a conscious choice to take what they want out of this film, you have to be aware that people are going to make that choice, because there are these people out there. And when you handle these subjects, you give them the potential to say, I identify with that.
Yeah.
Now, did the story flip the script enough to make it clear enough that this is not what's happening and this is the craziness of Joker? Or is it easy enough for these people to see a victim in Joker and identify with it and relate to it? And that's where a lot of the discussion on the dangerous content of this story revolves around. And I understand it, because with the Aura Theater, how can you discredit their feelings and not showing the Joker after what they've lived through and what they experienced with the shooting with James Holmes? I believe that was his name.
Yeah, it's a tough decision to even. It was actually a tough decision for me to like be like, okay, let's go see the Joker, and then it's the back of your mind where like, but what's gonna happen? You know, it's like every day you step out and you're thinking, what's gonna happen today? That's how society is now.
Yeah.
And of course the Joker movie comes out, and people of course remember what happened in that theater, and it's just, people walked into that theater just wanting to watch a superhero movie, and look what happened. It was a horrible experience. So I'm not surprised that they decided not to show that at all. So
Yeah, and that's just the subjectivity of this movie. You have to be aware of the potential of it, but does that mean that you don't make the movie? I don't
yeah,
think so. I'm not there because, like Matt said, that gets into a sense of censorship on social responsibility of these movies. And I think this movie explores something that's happening right now and that impacts our lives. And that is what the most influential art does. It's
hmm
very relevant, it's very powerful. And this gets us talking. This gets us on the discussion, but is it a discussion that needs to be had?
yeah,
And I think that's up to everyone to kind of take on their own and bring to that discussion what they will. But I can't say that I love this movie and this is my favorite movie ever because it can't be approached like that, in my opinion. It's something that it's a lot to take in. And I think when you bring it up, I can't say, this is like top 5 favorite movies ever. It's just a lot. And it's well done, but I still have to be neutral on how I feel about it because it's handling content that you don't see often. This is not a Marvel movie of having a great time, having fun in the theater. You have to engage with this content and pick through it with a subjective eye. Maybe read between the lines a little, if I can say it in another way, because this film has depth. And if you just catch the highlights, it could speak the wrong message.
Well, definitely. And just kind of my last thoughts on that subject is this kind of occurred to me when you posed the question as to whether or not a film, and during this, now and the current zeitgeist and anxieties out there, should even possibly be made. And my feeling on that is I can understand somebody's perspective, and I would want to respect that if they truly felt it would be irresponsible to make this. I don't want to be dismissive of that, but I think another perspective worth at least mentioning is if we let the bad guys dictate our actions, then by that measure they win, and we can't empower them like that. We have a responsibility as the quote unquote good guys to stand up and stand together and say, no, you're not going to scare us and intimidate us. And that's just kind of where I come down on it. I don't want to be, again, I don't want to be dismissive of anybody who doesn't want to see this. If you don't want to see this, or at least don't want to see it in theaters, I understand. But there's multiple vantage points and absolutely no easy answers in this situation, is I think my personal final takeaway on it. You guys have any final thoughts before we close out discussion?
Well, I mean, kind of like what I said before, this isn't something that I'm going to say is the best movie DC's ever made, and it's my favorite movie ever, but it's worth watching and it's worth exploring. And I think it facilitates a discussion that we need to have. And whether it does so in a way that's right, I'm not too sure on, but it is making that attempt and breaking the barriers of how we perceive these situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I completely
That's
agree with that.
And I mean, let's also not forget, points to everyone involved for doing something comic book based that is just utterly new and unique and has not been done before in that genre.
Completely.
Yeah.
Gotta give it up to whoever had the balls to greenlight this movie and envision it. So, for what it's worth. So, okay, well, hey, that's been our big, heady, deep Joker discussion. Feel free to hit us back with any comments, and maybe we can address some comments. That would be awesome if we got some.
Yeah,
You know what? That sounded oddly desperate, and I didn't mean it.
Talk to us about this
Show
movie.
us love.
But it's true. This movie makes us want to talk about it. So if you want to
Yeah.
talk about it, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, hey, let's move on to our third and final segment. What have you been reading, and what are you looking forward to? Nick, what say you?
Oh, goodness. Let's see. I touched on last week that I've been reading Preacher, and that is ongoing. I've also been like reading it alongside watching it, so getting a good back and forth. It's brilliant stuff, and it's great Halloween reading if that's what you're looking for in October. I've also been going back through Walking Dead comics and the series, just reliving my glory days of getting new Walking Dead content in October. The series is back, but it's just not the same with no book. Like, what is happening? And that's really, like, my reading, especially with Comic Watch and my reviews, my reading catches up with what's happening currently. So I've been definitely catching up on Harley. There's new Vampirella, a new Red Sonja. There's also a team up of Vampirella and Red Sonja because Dynamite. And they are all great. Like, loving what they're doing. And I tend to recommend them a lot. I just finished Red Sonja, and Mark Russell's telling this crazy epic story. It's on issue 9 now, and it's all one continuous story. And something that it suits Red Sonja pretty well, so it's an interesting book. As far as what I'm looking forward to, well, I guess before I have to touch on the fact that Spawn 301 came out. For so many shows when I got on this show that I was talking about the road to 300. 300 hit, we had the discussion, and now we're on 301. That's the record breaker, and kind of rounds out this story. You have to check it out. It's just badass stuff.
Must I?
You have to.
Okay.
We've had this discussion. I'll die on this hill every
Look,
time.
I'm not the hardcore Spawn hater that some others have been, okay?
Why? It's an amazing comic.
Finally, someone on my side.
Listen to the anime girl.
All right, I will do that. Miriam, what have you been reading? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm currently reading Demon Slayer.
Okay.
I love Demon Slayer. It's about a boy that comes home one night, well, actually one day, and finds his whole family completely murdered. Ends up finding out that whoever murdered him actually turned his sister into a demon. So it's like you have the funny parts in it, and then you have the serious parts in it. I love it. The manga artist is named, and I'm sorry for butchering the name, I'm just going to say the first name, is Koyoharu. Love it. Love them. I think they're amazing. Their art is just completely amazing. So I'm happy that tomorrow is the new chapter, so I can't wait to read that. So you definitely have to see the anime also, because the graphics in the anime, wow. It's really going up there with My Hero Academia as well, and Dr. Stone. So I can't wait for that.
Wow. Okay.
Very nice. So I have been reading Superman, the Earth Stealers, which was kind of a freebie that was sent to me by our sometime compatriot John Jack. Shout out, John. It was written. It was a square-bound one-shot that came out around 1988. And it's kind of interesting just because of the creative team that's on it. It was written by John Byrne, but then they got Kurt Swan to do the art with inks by Jerry Ordway. And it was one of the last major projects Swan did before fully retiring and then ultimately passing away a few years after that. I think it was around 96, although I could be wrong about that. But it's just like this fun little story where these aliens come and they literally steal the Earth because I guess they didn't have anything better to do. And I know.
Nope.
What I'm looking forward to, actually, I haven't made it to my LCS yet this week, but I am really, really, really looking forward to The Batman's Grave by Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch. the classic Authority team reunited. I've heard nothing but great things about this, so that's going to go to the top of the read list when I get paid tomorrow. And I'm sure I'll rave about it next week. But
Yeah,
That's our payday, huh?
so it goes.
our former host Cody recently read that book and could not stop raving about it. Is saying that it's already this like definitive take on Batman or something. So it's
better
got
than Dark Knight Returns, and I'm like, all right
better
now.
than Snyder. Now
No,
I just have to read it to see what he's talking about.
I absolutely do. But I mean, Ellis and Hitch are a proven creative team.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is worth the price of admission for me. So
Totally. Absolutely.
go. Maybe. Well, hey, I think that is it for us this week. We've reached the end. Miriam Herrera, thank you for stopping by. You are welcome back anytime. With me, with me has been Nicholas Osborne from Carthage, Texas. I almost got it, Nick. And I'm your host, Matt. This has been the Comic Watchers Show, episode 51. Thank you very much for tuning in. You can find us on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and wherever finer podcasts are to be had. Till next time, bye.
Bye-bye.